Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and today we welcome Rand Kelly to the show. Rand can currently be seen on the Contrarians, Sea of Tranquility, Ryan's Vinyl Destination, and other YouTube channels. Rand is stopping by today for an interview. We will see what makes Rand tick right after this. Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I have Rand Kelly in the house. Tonight's a special episode because we're going to do a general interview with Rand. Many of you seen Rand on Sea of Tranquility and the Contrarians, but what makes Rand tick? We know Rand's a big prog guy. He's like a music encyclopedia, but I'd like to get down to what makes Rand tick and how this all started out. Rand Kelly, welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse. You've been here before, but how are you tonight?
I'm fine, Grant. Thank you so much for doing this. I really
Excellent.
appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, I mean, you've been around the block. What was your first experience, your first musical experience? At what point in your life when you heard, like, I don't know, I'm assuming it was the Beatles that might have turned you on, because I know we've talked about that before, but what was your first musical awakening?
The first things I remember were back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
The radio at that time in Eureka, California, where I was born and lived most of my life until I was 18, was playing, all kinds of rock and roll, but I didn't understand what that meant. They didn't really use the term back then much on the radios, I recall. But I like things like Sheb Wooley's Purple People Eater. That was
Mm-hmm.
really a big influence on me. And I liked I can't remember Buddy Holly for some reason, Peggy Sue, and That'll Be the Day. For some reason, those songs, they don't mean anything to me from then. I like them now. But my mom had all kinds of eclectic music, like because she was a member of the Columbia Record Company, and she used to play records a lot, and I got turned on to Miles Davis because she had Seven Steps to Heaven, and I got turned on to these piano guys called Ferrante and Tyker. They'd play two pianos at once and record just beautiful stuff. And she was just all over the place. So she started buying these guitar albums by this guy named Al Caiola,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked his stuff. He was real good. He would play famous melodies that people knew, like from the movies, and just standards, and just a beautiful tone. And of course, they didn't have a fuzz box back then, so it was all crystal clear, clean guitar. And I just kind of gravitated towards the guitar for some reason. And then my mom also had the first Elvis Presley album called Elvis Presley, and she used to play that, and I loved that. And told her that my favorite song on the album was Tutti Frutti. Had no idea that Little Richard even existed, much less wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought Elvis had written it because in those days I didn't really read
How would you
credits.
know? Right.
Young, like 7, 8 years old. So it just all started sinking in. The radio was playing all the time, and like when we'd be driving around and stuff, and she'd always put on. We never really had to listen to country western. My mom was in charge of it. Um, she would put on the pop stations, and they'd play anything. And then all of a sudden, I went on in 1964. I went on a winter Boy Scout camp trip for the weekend in a really horrible storm, muggy, just bogs and stuff like that. And so when I got home on that Sunday night, it was February 9th, 1964. And I come walking in the door, and I was just miserable and upset and really down and depressed. And my mom started yelling at me. And of course, in those days, I went by Randy. And so my mom's going, Randy, Randy, come here, quick, 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 quick. You got to see this. You got to see this. And I come running into the living room to see what she was talking about. And the Beatles are playing. And I'm going, what the heck is this? this is unbelievable. And my parents are putting them down, calling them long hairs and idiots like
Like
that.
everybody else did. Yeah.
And yeah, and so anyways, I'm looking at them and I don't know what song they were doing. Maybe it was From Me to You or I Want to Hold Your Hand or I don't
Hmm.
know. But she said, "Oh, they're coming back. They're going to be on again at the end of the show." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then they're going, "Don't you think they're idiots? Don't they look stupid?" And I go, "Yeah, those guys are real weird." And I'm thinking to myself, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
So
I
when
know
you
what I want
heard
to
it,
do.
so when
I
you
want to
heard
play
it,
guitar." Yeah.
well, maybe that, but was it like anything else you'd ever heard before?
No,
It was like aliens landed and started playing this. It was
it was
totally
like,
fresh
yeah,
and new.
it was like I know what I want to do. The first thing I want to do is learn how to play guitar and learn these songs
Mhm.
and learn every one of them, whatever they put out. And I'm going to do nothing but buy the Beatles. I'm going to get the Beatles albums. Nobody else. That's what I
Mhm.
did.
But it was that instantaneous once you were exposed to them off Ed Sullivan.
But before I became a guitar player, I was a trumpet player. But that's like Paul McCartney. He did the same thing. But I don't really want to go too much into that. Let's
Mhm.
just say there were a lot of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass albums in the house. Stack about like that.
So your mom or your folks would, I mean, I'm assuming they had a stereo in the house or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was a nice stereo.
So they would, but what would they play all the time?
Well, like I said, they would play
Herb Albert
Herb
and
Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. They played Johnny Cash. They would
mhm.
play, oh my God, all kinds of people. They were
What?
very eclectic. They were all over the map. But my mom liked more like jazz and easy listening more than
Mhm.
dad. Dad
I
liked
gotcha.
dad liked country more than that. But I remember the first time he heard the Moog album that I bought called, I mean not Moog, Moog, the Electric Eclectics of Dick Hyman,
Mhm.
Moog. And I got my mom to order that on the Columbia Record Company, and my dad loved that. In fact, so much that when he had a guest over one time, he says, "Listen to this," and he put the record on. And he has the guy listening to it. It was crazy. I was like, I can't even believe this is happening. And my dad likes Star Trek, and it's like,
Mhm.
really weird.
Just seems odd that he'd be into that, but
Yeah,
whatever,
I
whatever.
was I was surprised. Yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't really want to go too much off the music thing, but your parents are pretty influential in one way or
Oh,
another.
exactly.
And they bought me my first guitar. So,
Mhm.
I got it for a birthday present. It was a piece of crap. I didn't
Yeah,
even have a
my
name.
folks weren't so influential. They just like to watch Lawrence Welk, and they had a whole bunch of records, but they never played it. I just remember my dad playing. Though my dad was big into Paul McCartney and Wings. He did like Wings big time. But he
Fred was
would,
great.
I mean, they were from that whole era. They like Benny Goodman and all that. They like the swing stuff. That's
Yeah.
what was happening when they were young. That's what they really liked.
Well, I have
But
a memory of my mother having her best friend over, and my dad wasn't there, and it was at nighttime because he
mm,
worked nights. And her and her friend Mary asked me if I had any records that they could dance to because she
mhm,
was trying to teach my mom some dances. And they go, "We really want something that's really up and really energetic." So I gave them the Beatles' second album and put that on, and they went ape shit on "Roll Over Beethoven."
mhm.
And I thought, I can't even believe I'm in this world. This is amazing. Watching my mother and her best friend dance to the Beatles, and I get to see all this.
Right.
It's nuts.
So how long was it till, you were turned on to the Beatles that you were able to like get your first guitar? How did that go? How did that go down?
Yeah, well, I just said, I want to be a guitar player. I'm
Hmm.
really not too happy playing trumpet, although I kept playing it. But I thought I could do both. And I also wanted to play piano. And so they bought a piano and got lessons for my brother and sister. And they like, what do they call it? Test pilot where you don't make it. Something about
Mm,
failed out or smoked out or I forgot what term.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Flamed out or something like that.
Hmm.
They both flamed out on the piano. And I thought to myself, well, I want to play it, but I don't want to take lessons.
Hmm.
And my mom's going, what? And I go, yeah, I don't want to have to read music. I want to just play by ear. She goes, how are you going to do that? And so when she was working, I would put on the Beatles' Abbey Road on side two and learned how to play along with the album. And I taught myself. I go, well, if this key is C, then this key is going to be D, and this key is going to be E. And I used guitar knowledge that I had in my head to teach myself how to play piano.
Hmm.
And I did that in 1969. I mean, I'm
Wow.
still a huge Beatles fan. And I hadn't really ventured into any other bands, but I did hear them on the radio. I mean, all the kinds of groups, the British invasion bands. Heard
Hmm.
all that stuff, heard the Beach Boys, it was just constant. Rolling Stones, Doors. The radio was my main source of variety. But as far as my record collection, it was Beatles. And then I asked my mom to order the Kinks' first album, You Really Got Me. In America, it was called "You Really Got Me," and in UK, it's called Kinks, but
Hmm.
it's the same
Yeah.
tunes. And I liked that, but it wasn't something that changed my life. I mean, I thought "You Really Got Me" was a great song, and the rest of it was, okay. But I go, these guys don't hold a candle to the Beatles.
Well, no, they didn't.
But there were other bands that I really liked, the Yardbirds, especially with Jeff Beck. Being introduced to him was quite the revelation.
Well, I mean, when you were a kid back in those days, though, I mean, my cousin Mary was basically in the same era as you. And I mean, she didn't get so many records, but she got a lot of 45s because 45s were cheaper,
Yeah.
you know? And that was more of the, I don't know, I don't want to say that was the thing, but I think during the 60s, it was much more of a 45 market, for,
Well, I
kids
got a
like in
record
your
player
age
for
and stuff.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry.
No, all right.
I got a record player for Christmas that was real lo-fi,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't stereo. It had one speaker and it lifted up like a lid. It was like what you'd call a Crossley, I guess, but I can't remember the. I've been
Oh,
trying
I
to
had
find it
one.
just from the color. It looked like a 50-50 bar. It was orange with white trim, and I can't remember anything what it was called. But I used to play that thing to death. And I didn't buy a lot of 45s. I went to Sacramento to visit my cousins one time, and
Mm-hmm.
we went to Tower Records. And in those days, they had listening booths and stuff. And I took the 45, the Ticket to Ride, and Yes It Is by the Beatles. And I bought that for like $1. And that was literally the only 45 that I had.
Huh.
And I lost it, of course, over time.
Yeah, my cousin had buku 45s, all kinds of stuff. In fact, when I was a kid, she played me uh Monkey's Last Train to Clarksville.
Yeah, see,
And
now I like them a lot. My
what
brother was.
was the other one? Words. She had the picture sleeves for them. Gave them to me when I was a kid because I heard them, and it was like when I heard the Monkeys, it was like, of course, I was already a Beatles fan, but when I heard the Monkeys, I was like, "Oh, holy crap! Listen to that."
And I didn't know they were a manufactured band at the time.
Well, you didn't care.
But you know what? When people found out about the Beach Boys doing that, like on Pet Sounds and stuff, hey, that was fine. But when the Monkeys did it, it was like, oh, that's a cardinal sin because the Beatles play all their own
But
stuff.
all
Yeah,
those bands, Mamas and the Papas, they're all those bands. There, it was not unusual. What the Monkeys were doing, the fact that they actually played everything on Headquarters is amazing. That they were
right,
able to do that.
right. Because they kept saying, well, we can play. The
Right,
studio won't let us.
right. But I'm just saying, when I was a kid,
Yeah.
God, I must have been 10 or 11 or something when I heard the words and Last Train to Clarksville. I was like, holy mackerel. She gave me those 45s. They were picture sleeves. I still have them. I played the hell out of them.
Well, my brother had those Monkeys albums, and he'd play them on my record player. And I fell in love with that song called "She." I also
Hmm.
liked "I Want to Buy Me a Dog,"
Hmm.
and I just thought, they were good. I mean, I used to watch their show. Funny, funny show. It was just it was like a Hard Day's Night on television every week. It was just crazy.
Right. Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, that movie actually really influenced me because when I went and saw A Hard Day's Night, I um I just felt like I was changed. To me, it was like a
Mhm.
musical baptism. I just felt like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to be a Beatle, you know. And I remember running on the field at not the field, but the front lawn of the school that I went to. I was on a Sunday or something. It was closed, and I'm just flipping and flopping all over the lawn, doing cartwheels and jumping up and down. And people must have thought I was crazy. I was 11
Wow.
years old, but I just seen A Hard Day's Night, and that was that movie really affected me. I mean, I just came home. All I could think of is I don't care about nothing. I just want to learn Beatles music. I want to. If I can't be a Beatle, I'm going to learn their music.
Mhm.
And I'd buy these songbooks. Like my mom would buy me a songbook, like the deluxe Beatles songbook, and I found out all the keys were wrong. You couldn't play along with the albums. It was like ridiculous. Like take for instance, with the worst offender was Every Little Thing. It was written in E flat. Now, to musicians, they'll know what that is. That's three flats. It's a real hard key to play in guitar, but the song is in the key of A, which is diametrically opposed as far as you can go, opposite in the musical scale. And I just kept finding out more and more that these songs were all in the wrong key. So I transposed them. I cut out, not cut out, but I took a Marks-a-Lot pen or something and crossed out the chords they were telling me they were, and I would write in above them the chords that matched the record, and that's how I learned how to play Beatles songs.
Mhm. How cool is that?
I did my own transposing,
Mm.
and I'm 11 years old.
Mm.
Oh no, wait, I hadn't started guitar yet, so I was a little older than that. Yeah, I think my first guitar was I was 12, 1965. And that was where I started really learning.
What kind of
16,
guitar? What kind of guitar did they buy you?
it didn't have a name.
Mm.
It was a nameless guitar. It was a little walnut looking and acoustic, and it had horrible strings. They were just cutting into my fingers and stuff. It actually was terrible.
Mhm.
I mean, and I thought I was like in seventh heaven playing this thing. And then I said, I need to get an electric. I need an electric guitar with an amplifier. So I got a K Vanguard, and I just played the crap out of that thing. And
Do
my
you,
cousin,
do you
he
still
turned
have
me
the
on.
K? Do you still have the K Vanguard or
No,
no?
no, I sold it when I was in the Air Force because I had a Gibson SG then. But
Mhm.
what happened was my cousin turned me on to Led Zeppelin,
Mhm.
Cream. He'd loaned me Wheels of Fire and the first two Led Zeppelin albums, and also Jimi Hendrix, and it was my head just went. That's where I started really expanding. And then the next band I got into, where I actually bought with my own money that I really wanted. Well, it started at school because this guy named John Thompson came in and showed the music teacher that he had a brand new album, and he said it's so good you can't believe it. And they listened to it during lunch, and then our class came up after lunch, and the teacher said his name was Mr. Minky. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. Shasta cream soda, by the way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyways, he says, we're not going to play our instruments today. We're going to listen to a record. And he put on Chicago Transit Authority and played all four sides. And everybody was just like, well, the girls were like, what is this? And the guys were just like,
They had enough time to play all four sides.
yeah,
I'll be darned.
in one class, just one after another, because they weren't really that long in those days, but it was a double album.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with it. So I went down to Ambrosini's Music when I got my allowance, and I went and bought that and Chicago 2 because it had already come out. And I noticed they were no longer called Chicago Transit Authority. They were just going by the name Chicago. It technically that album was not called Chicago 2. It's just called Chicago. But anyways, I just Terry Cat just blew my mind. And I thought, oh, this is awesome. And then my cousin loaned me his Fox Fuzz Face to hook up to the amp that I had, the little Univox amp I had, which had no power. It was solid state, and it was really yucky. But when I run the fuzz through it, I was like, oh my God, this exists? You know, it's like it changed everything. The fuzz box changed again everything I knew about guitar. Just was just an absolute one step up. You know, it's just unbelievable. I had so much fun with the fuzz box. And he also loaned me a wah-wah pedal too. That was fun too.
Yeah, that fuzz box is probably worth a fortune now.
The fuzz face? Yeah, those things are not cheap.
To find a real one and that's intact would cost you an arm and a leg.
Same thing that Jimi Hendrix used.
Wow.
And then after that, things were starting to wind down in high school. And I really had to make a decision what I wanted to do. We had a draft at the time, and I did not want to get drafted, so I joined the United States Air Force, and during Vietnam in 1970, and I was really lucky. My first base was Nellis in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was there for about 2 years, and that's where I bought my Gibson SG, which I wish I had still.
SG Standard, is that what it was?
It was a really weird one with a Bigsby vibrola,
Mm-hmm.
and had the strange kind of black plate. It was a caramel colored kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have pictures of it and stuff.
I know, but that was that era where Gibson was putting out weird stuff.
Yeah, Paul
Where
Kantner.
Norland was. It was they were trying to cut costs on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it was a 72, and Paul Kantner of Jefferson Starship ended up playing it because I saw pictures of him. He had the same exact guitar, same color and everything. And it played like a dream. I mean, the neck on that was just super freaking fast. And by then I was learning how to play lead solos, you know. But I started out as a rhythm player. I owe everything to John Lennon. He's the one that taught me how to play songs. Because if you can't play rhythm, you can't sing. I mean, it's wonderful that these guys are playing a million notes a second.
Is it?
Well,
is it really?
To them, you know, but if you can't play simple chords, you can't sing a song.
I know, but Yngwie Malmsteen.
I get tired of it. I went through that phase too.
It's just a bunch of noise as far as I'm concerned.
First I ever heard him and was in Alcatraz, and I didn't even keep the album. I had it for a while. I got rid of it. But anyways, I don't want to jump too far ahead because that's
no, you're good.
That's 1980 something.
Right.
83. But anyways, yeah, in the Air Force.
So did you play in any bands in the Air Force or anything like that, or is that
no? I jammed with some
friends.
I jammed with some friends. Well, you know, it's funny. I used to take my long cord out into the courtyard at the barracks at Nellis there, and I used to just play like Hendrix licks and stuff like that all by myself, and just freaking what the heck is that? Anyways, yeah, and just playing outside and stuff like that in the heat. And people would say, that sounds pretty good. And somebody else said, do you have to do that outside? I'm trying to sleep or something. I had graveyard or whatever, and I had to pull it all back in. But no, I didn't get a chance to jam with anybody until I went to Puerto Rico. That was my second base, and the war was still going. So I got sent to Puerto Rico at Ramey Air Force Base, and that was when I sold my Vanguard. I didn't want to take it to Puerto Rico. I didn't think I needed it. I think that's the way it was. I know I sold my record collection. I didn't want to haul that. It was kind of I made some stupid decisions back then, but I really opened up.
Well, we all do. I mean, when you're young, you always make stupid decisions.
Where I'm going with this is it's like 1971, 72, and I'm in Las Vegas, and I'm exposed to all kinds of different music now. And I'm listening to radio, FM radio, and I hear this beautiful song. It sounds like they're singing about playing chess. And I'm going, what the heck is this? This girl is really good. This lady's really good singer. So I called up on the KLUK hotline or whatever, and I said, what was that band you just played? It sounded like, you know, something in time with your time. It's something like that, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's this new band we just got into called Yes. We just got in called Yes. They did the Yes album." And I said, "Oh, I loved it, man. What's that chick's name that's singing?" And he goes, "Well, first of all, that's not a chick. That's a guy named John Anderson." And I'm going, "What?"
Mhm.
Because your move didn't sound like a guy that I'd ever heard before, and I just absolutely fell head over heels in love with Yes. And to this day, they're my favorite band. But I just went ape over this band. I was listening to the Yes album constantly. I couldn't take it out of the 8-track player in my car
Ooh,
for
the
weeks.
8-track player.
Yeah. Yes just changed my life. And then when I found out they were coming to town, I went and saw them, and they opened for Black Sabbath, which was the only time I saw Black Sabbath. I've seen Yes like 27 times, but I was a huge Black Sabbath fan too by this time. I loved Master of Reality. I think it was the first one I ever bought, and people were
Mhm.
buying the first one in Paranoid and stuff. But I had a thing about buying the current album when it came out. If I was just introduced to the band, I
Mhm.
would buy their latest album, which is what I did a lot. So I bought Master of Reality. To this day, it's my favorite.
So you had two moments from what I gather. The Beatles changed your life, and then when you heard Yes again, that was another one of those moments.
And another instructional album was Grand Funk live album,
Mhm.
because I fell in love with Grand Funk Railroad too because
I
of
can't
Mark Farner.
imagine that.
Mark Farner.
Ah,
I found out he's the easiest person to copy.
well,
He,
they're
he's
pretty
not a
meat and
con-
potatoes.
he's not a complex guitar player, but if you're learning how to play, he's great for
Mhm.
instruction. And also Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath. So I figure my biggest teachers were Steve Howe, Mark Farner, and Tony Iommi. I'm not saying I played like anybody, either one of them, but I was getting influences from all over the
Right.
place. And the funniest thing about it is this Road to Prague thing that I did, but in those days, the term didn't exist. It was just called classical rock or art rock or
Art
something like
rock.
that. The word progressive hadn't even been coined yet,
Mhm.
but people were just going, well, there's A to Z, and good luck. You go into the store and you just find what you like. But I got into Grand Funk Railroad a lot, and he was just it was just easy to learn his leads, and I went like, especially like Inside Looking Out. You can play that. That's not that hard to play. You've got an ear
Mhm.
and you can follow along, and that's what I did. It was like you know how you trace on paper, you trace a line or a word or something. That's what it was like, I think, for me.
Mm.
And I was learning and learning and learning, and I didn't even mention the word guitar lessons, right? My guitar lessons were short and sweet. They just went nowhere really. The first thing I ever learned was how to play Day Tripper, and that was back when Day Tripper was a big hit. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth now, but I'm trying
You're
to
fine.
bring it up. But yeah, I'm just expanding in all different directions. I'm trying different things. I'm getting into Steppenwolf. I'm getting into Joni Mitchell. I'm getting into the Rolling Stones. I don't really think I bought the Doors at all, but I did get L.A. Woman. I must admit. Again, it was coming out at that time in '71. I bought. I think it was '71. I bought L.A. Woman. I
71, yeah.
really loved that album, and but I didn't buy everything the Doors did. But it turns out that I got all that now. But there was just so many bands. I got turned on to Emerson Lake Palmer by a friend of mine in the barracks.
Mhm.
He says, "Hey, Rand, come here." And I went over, and you know, he just said, "Sit here," in between his two speakers. Were just like headphones. They were huge. And he goes, "Check this out." And he put on music that sounded like it was coming at me like a freight train. and it was going to hit me hard. And it was Tarkus by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And when that was over, I was just like, I could barely walk. I just said, I think the guy's name was Michael. And I said, Mike, I didn't even know music like that existed. How did they do that? He goes, I don't know, but there's only 3 of them. And I'm going, I've seen, I've seen that album in the shelves and stuff, but I never thought, I didn't know what kind of music it was. And I saw Emerson Lake and Palmer's first album, and it had that font,
Mhm.
and it looks like old Western movie font, you know? And I thought it was a country album. I had no idea. And I didn't look on the back to make sure there was any kind of special instruments or anything. But what I was going to say is, I have no memory of ever seeing King Crimson in the Court of the Crimson King anywhere
Wow, I don't think that
until
record's
1973 when I was in Sacramento out of the Air Force. Then I saw it.
I mean, when that came out, I don't think it's sold over here at all.
But you would see that, you know, that was so obvious that
Mhm.
that guy screaming on the cover.
Mhm.
And you would think that I would have saw that somewhere in the base exchange store or out about in Sears or I don't think they had a Tower Records in Vegas at the time, but yeah, I just don't. I'd have no memory of seeing that record. So the first King Crimson album I ever bought was I bought 2 at once that were on 8-track. One was called In the Wake of Poseidon, and the other one was called Islands. Know nothing about the band. I'd heard people talk about them, and I bought. I bought those 2, and the first thing I put in the car was In the Wake of Poseidon, and first King Crimson song I ever heard was Pictures of the City, and I just freaking went absolute crazy over that album. I love In the Wake of Poseidon in a way more than the first one because it's what you're exposed to and how it
Mhm.
made you feel. I think that's what it is. It's kind of like a sentimental value on that. Wow, I'm just rattling.
No, you're good. It's all about you, Rand, not
It
about
is.
me.
It's the Rand
Um,
Kelly interview.
so when you heard King Crimson Wood, could you say that that was another one of those moments where the skies parted? I mean, did it affect you to the point where it's just like,
Oh yeah.
holy crap? Not only Emerson, like, well, let me ask you this: were you more affected by King Crimson, or did Emerson, Lake and Palmer have the same type of effect?
Well, I heard ELP first,
Okay.
and then I heard Crimson after when I got out of the Air Force. Once I got home from Puerto Rico and got back to Sacramento,
Mhm.
that's when I bought the King Crimson.
Okay.
And I think I got it at Sears in a bargain bin or something. Nobody wanted that stuff. It was going for like $2.99, you know.
Hmm.
And Islands was a real beautiful album, but it's not the kind of thing you want to cruise around to listen to.
It's
So I
it's
did
not
most
a
of
cruising record.
no, and I did most of my listening, driving around. And I remember In the Wake of Poseidon just be, the way it goes down, 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 down,
Hmm.
down, 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 down. I'm going, this is cool. This is like Peter Gunn or something. It's like a New York detective story or, just crazy. I just loved it. And when I heard Robert Fripp play, it was just like instantaneous. I said, oh man, this guy, he's going to be in my Periscope for a long time.
Hmm. I
And
rem-
he is. I mean, I ended up buying all over there in that record area over there in my room. I've got all the King Crimson box sets that came out in the last 2 years. It took me 2 years to buy all of them. They were so expensive. I mean, I must have $3,000 worth of King Crimson.
well, Rand, everybody has to have a hobby.
My address is 555 555.
But I remember I've told this story before though, but back in the day when I was a kid, there was a store called Bargain City, which was like a department store, but they had a good record department. So this must have been like 1975. And I remember going through the cheapie bins,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that was just when I got turned on to the Beatles was 1975. So, I was probably looking for Beatles stuff since I was just, you
Yeah.
know, but I remember going through the cheapie bin and there were like, I don't know, I'm going to say 50 copies of Big Star Radio City in there as a cutout for a
Yeah, it's funny.
dollar.
I've never really listened to that band. I've heard like
But
that
you know, if
song.
I would have bought all those, I could have turned those around and made a fortune. They were cutouts, but they were all sealed because those records didn't do anything. And I just remember as a kid, I just remember that album cover, that red cover with the the shot on Radio City, and I just
See,
made a mental block.
they were kind of like the King's X of the '70s. They were so good
Mm.
that radio
Well,
and
radio, yeah,
industry just ignored them, didn't push them, and didn't promote them.
right.
Yeah, Alex Chilton, I know he's a genius. There's no doubt. But first time I heard that song was on That '70s Show. It used to be their theme. I mean, it always was, but they changed it to Cheap Trick. But originally, it was Big Star.
Right. Well, you
It's
just would have thought in the early 70s that people wouldn't have had enough of the Beatles, and you would have thought that that would have taken off, but no one really cared about that stuff then.
yeah,
I mean, all it
yeah,
was
that's
a
true.
continuation of British invasion type of stuff for the most part, but no one else was playing that. Raspberries were, they had some hits, but Big Star was forgotten until REM discovered them. That's neither here or there. That's a totally another topic. So,
Another big influential album was Jethro Tull's "Thick as a Brick,"
mhm.
and I ended up going to see them live in Las Vegas, and they performed that whole album, and it was just, oh my God!
Well,
And
how did you get turned on to them?
Eagles was opening for them. How did I get turned on to Jethro Tull?
Mhm.
Aqualung.
Mm.
Aqualung was being played a lot, and I remember going down to the guitar store. It was Ted Vesley's music store on East Charleston Street in Las Vegas, and there was this guy, and I can't remember his name now, but he was a cool dude, and he had long hair. He worked there, and I said, "Do me a favor." He goes, "Yeah, what?" And I go, "Can you teach me how to play that Aqualung? From the riff to all the way to when he starts singing." And he goes, "Sure." And he showed me real slow, bong, bong, bong,
Mhm.
bong, 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 and the way the chords rise up and stuff. That's a weird song. Okay. It, it,
Mm.
it doesn't follow any kind of regular rock or pop, what do you call it? Expected turns or whatever you want to call it. It's very surprising.
Mhm.
And he taught me the whole thing and I remembered it. And I said, "Thank you so much." And because I bought Aqualung. And everybody did. Everybody in the whole barracks owned Aqualung. And then Thick as a Brick came out, and people were just going, "Oh my God, you got to hear what Jethro Tull just did." They put out one song for a whole album,
Mhm.
nonstop. Well, at 8-track, it would be breaking 4 times, but the record was just turn it over. And of course, they didn't have anything other than cassettes at that time, so you had your choice of cassette, LP, or 8-track. And I just remember just going absolutely bonkers trying to figure out Thick as a Brick. It was just, this is one of those albums that I had said to myself, I'm just going to have to listen to it and enjoy it. There's no way I'm going to be able to copy this thing. But as time went on, I was able to pick out certain parts. Bass parts were easier on that album than guitar parts for me. But I
Mhm.
didn't have a bass. I could play bass. I could play bass lines on my 6-string guitar and just pretend it was a bass, stuff like that.
Hmm.
That was another big influential album. And then Pink Floyd, being turned on to Pink Floyd. My story about finding out about Pink Floyd is probably too long. It's really hard to shorten it up, but
But when you were a kid, you never heard Piper or any of that?
no, I never got exposed to any of that stuff, that Sid Barrett stuff. I didn't know any of that existed. My first Pink Floyd album was Metal.
Mm.
I got turned on to Echoes by a friend, and I heard it on the radio. I guess I'll tell the story because it's got to be told.
All
But
right, go
anyway,
ahead.
so I'm hanging out. Well, I'm living it off the base in this house, and you had to have a roommate because you can only afford to live so well, so easy. So we'd leave the stereo on all night long and very low and everything, and the amplifier, I think it was a Sansui, put out kind of a blue glow on the whole
Mm-hmm.
room, kind of like the cover of Metal, kind of pinkish blue or something. And I was dreaming, and I thought I was dreaming about these trucks that were going up the grapevine. For some reason, I had that dream, and I was listening to the music, going, "I'm too tired to wake up, but this is amazing. I just feel like these trucks are going up this hill." And I go, "Did you hear that song last night? That real long song, kind of sounded like trucks going up the road, like the grapevine." And he goes, "No, I was out of it. I was sound asleep." So months later, I can't afford to live in this house anymore, and I got to go back to the barracks where they'll pay for the room. Good old Air Force, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this guy. I think his name was Michael. There was a lot of Michaels in those days. His name is immaterial, but anyways, he says, "Hey, I want you to listen to something and see what you think." And he puts on the headphones on my head and tells me to lay down on the bed. He's going to sit over on the desk and he's going to run this record for me. And I'm listening to it, and I hear this overhead the albatross hangs my. It's a beautiful song. I just love it and everything. And I'm listening to it and stuff, and we're doing with that. And when it starts getting in the middle of where it starts getting kind of crazy, I started to recognize the song.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the one I heard in my dream. And I'm yelling, "The trucks, the trucks, the trucks." And of course, when you're wearing headphones, all he's hearing is me yelling, "The trucks, the trucks, the
Mm-hmm.
trucks." And he's going, "What trucks? What are you talking about?" And I said, and I explained this whole thing about the dream and everything. And I go, "This is it. This is it. It's Pink Floyd." Because I had no clue. And so, I had to go buy metal. And that's the story. I wanted to document it because I always thought it was kind of
Yeah, but
special.
you heard it in your dream. Kind of it's kind of wild.
Well, if I hadn't had the radio on, I wouldn't have heard it at all.
Right.
God knows what I would have been dreaming.
Well, at least it made an impression.
Yeah,
Made an impression on your subconscious.
but I didn't hear the part where it was singing. I didn't hear any vocals.
Mm-hmm.
I only heard this. And I found out later watching the movie of Live at Pompeii that they got that sound by an echo unit and taking a slide and sliding it on the bass strings and on the guitar strings, and it comes out
Like
the
that.
truck, the trucks.
Oh, whatever. I get it. No big.
But yeah, it was just so funny the way he looked at me because I was zoning. I was
Mm-hmm.
zoning out anyway, listening to it, but I didn't fall asleep. I was really digging the song, and to this day, Echoes is my favorite Pink Floyd song.
So, Rand, what happened after the military? Because I know you played in some bands.
Yeah, I did a gig in Sacramento, which I've got a picture of, but it doesn't show much because I was at the wrong angle when the person took the picture. Um, some benefit or something. We didn't really have a band. We just kind of put together a show for a friend,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really know the songs that well. And the guy that was running the thing was the bass player. And his name was
Mike.
Rick Shaw.
Okay.
I swear to
Could have
God,
been another Mike.
his
Hey,
name
I don't
was
know.
Rick Shaw, and he lived in Sacramento. And I had my Gibson SG, and I think I didn't own an amp at the time, and they loaned me an amp. And he said, "I'll point to you when I want you to solo."
Okay.
And because I didn't really know the song, and I just knew the key. And I'm just kind of pretending through the whole song, doing nothing. And he would point to me, and I'd turn the volume. I'm just, it was Carlos Santana kind of thing, or
Mm-hmm.
Jimi Hendrix, or whatever. I felt like Eric Clapton. I could copy a lot of people, pretend, like an impressionist. And and then he'd go like,
All right.
just,
Done. All right. You're good.
"Yeah, we'll play the rest of the song." And we did these songs. It was just amazing. Um, yeah, I was scared to death. I had stage fright like you couldn't believe
Mm.
because when you first start out, it is scary, isn't it? But yeah, I never got into a band in
Oh,
Sacramento. I
okay.
tried. I jammed with a few people. I remember one night it was at a pool party in Sacramento. Really nice house and playing outside in nice, beautiful weather in the summer and everything. And they let me do a solo, and I just kind of went too long. And the drummer, who wasn't playing drums because somebody else was playing drums, he come up to me. He's a good friend of mine, and he leans in and he says, "Nobody's listening." I'm just going, just wanking away, having
Right.
fun. And like that just destroyed me. I mean, I am so sensitive and I can be hurt so easy with words. And I just went into a shell after that. I didn't even want to play guitar. And now I was just depressed. I mean, it really affected me. I remember that one thing.
Wow, you were really sensitive.
Of all the things he could have said, I did not need to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you know what? We need to, it's time to dial it back in. We're going to finish up. Anything could have been better than nobody's listening. I think he was just in a bad mood or something, might have been drunk. But yeah, I was the guy that didn't know when to stop.
Well, that's okay. You know,
I love to
you're
play. What can I say?
um
So yeah, we're around 1976 now. I'm getting ready to move out of Sacramento and go
mhm.
up to Eureka, and I have nothing going for me, and I'm in real bad shape. So I go as far as financial situation. I can't go back home. Me and my dad are just at odds. And so I went to my grandmother's house in Eureka and moved in with her for 6 years, from 76 to 81. And I hope that math turned out right. 5 years, excuse me. So yeah. So and everybody in the family thought it was a good idea because she was all by herself, and
Mhm.
they thought it was good that I could keep an eye on her and stuff. Those were good times, yeah. That's where I started building my record collection in 1977.
Mhm.
First album I bought was Peter Gabriel, the very first Peter
Your
Gabriel.
grandmother did you were playing all that stuff? That rock and roll?
She would come by every now and again when I was playing something really nice and pretty,
Mhm.
like a mellow camel song, or she liked the Enid too. Sometimes when they weren't too rock, because a lot of people, reaction guys, don't even go anywhere near the Enid. I just think it's because they don't know about them.
Mm,
Maybe you don't
maybe.
know about them, but the Enid are phenomenal.
Mm.
I mean, they're the fathers of symphonic rock, serious symphonic rock. And I got turned on to that stuff from my prog friends in Eureka. They bought that first one called "In the Region of the Summer Stars," which is just a masterpiece, just absolutely
I
fabulous.
mean, was there anything in the States that took off? I don't remember any
Well,
of
"In
the
the Region of the Summer Stars" was probably their most popular one, and it didn't get that popular. Again, we're talking really cultish type stuff, even less than Frank Zappa. I got into him early too. It was 1971. Somebody said you got to get a Frank Zappa album, at least try it.
yeah.
So I bought the most recent one again, buying the most recent one, Chunga's Revenge, and I really liked it. He he was instantly effective in my musicality.
So, okay, Rand, so what happens next? You live with your grandmother for 6 years?
Yeah,
Then what?
yeah, and I put together a band while she's in Texas.
And
Some friends.
you're on that you're on that was that the
Oh
band that
no,
was on
that
the
came
comp?
later. That came
Okay.
later. I'll get to that. You're talking about the Humboldt County
Mhm.
Country album?
Mhm.
Yeah, that came later. But anyways, yeah, we wanted to do this. I made some friends with some younger kids. They were just getting out of high school, and they liked the fact that I ended up at a party or something, and the guy had a Les Paul, and he let me play it, and I played Close to the Edge. And they're looking at me like, you know that? It's like they were just blown away. And I said, yeah, yes, that's my favorite band. And I tell them about all the different groups I was into and stuff, and who I'd seen. And they were just like, oh my God, we got to be friends with this guy. And, I said, well, I live at my grandma's house over on Myrtle Avenue, and I can't really have everybody over, but she's going to go to Texas. next week for a couple of weeks. If you guys want to do a gig or something, let me know. We can scrounge up some songs. So I culled all the songs, sang all the songs, and played bass on most of the songs. And there was a little bit of keyboard, and I didn't own anything. I had to borrow everything from those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to call ourselves Meltdown. And it wasn't me that came up with the name. It was the drummer's father, because 3 Mile Island had just happened, and he said, "There's nothing hotter than a meltdown. Why don't you guys call yourselves Meltdown?" So we did 2 gigs. One was in a place called Fields Landing, and the other place was called Freshwater, which is right around Eureka. And we just played all these tunes. Well, we opened with Pink Floyd. This guy had this idea. It might have been my idea. I can't remember. So let's just play the entire album of Dark Side of the Moon for starters, and then we'll work from there. And the guy that was recording us on reel to reel, which I really wish I would have got a copy of that tape, and I never did. I don't know how it happened, but I just couldn't get it. And when we listen back to the tape, you can hear him on the microphone when we started with Dark Side of the Moon. He goes, "My God, can you effing dig it?
Mm-hmm.
Playing Dark Side of the Moon." So here I am on bass trying to play Dark Side of the Moon all the way through. And when we got to that part where the girl screams and stuff, we just let the guitar player just play solos all through that. I played bass on that whole album, and it was a lot of fun. And we got through it to the end, and I said, "Okay, now we got to do the other songs." So we did UK, we did Argent, we did
Mm-hmm.
Dry Heat, Easy Living. I mean, we just did everything that I liked, and they learned it and stuff. And we were rehearsing at my grandma's house and stuff, and she had no clue we were doing this. When she gets home, the neighbor says, "Your grandson had all these guys over, and they were playing rock and roll." My grandma was not happy.
I guess not.
But she said she understood. She goes, "Well, you didn't break anything, and it doesn't smell like pot, and, stuff like that." So I told the guys, I says, "Listen, we got a big jungle out in the back. If you want to go do one up, just do it outside." And we had a good time, And I wish we could have got a copy of that. So all I got is my memories of it. I'm still friends with one of those guys from that band. He supplied the steel guitar and the bass. And in fact, I just saw him up here in Reading just last week. He visited.
Nice.
And so that was my, you know, I couldn't really just join a band living there. I don't know why. I had a job. I was a night watchman at the mill. And it was hard, when you're
Mm-hmm.
working hard or swing, it's hard to be in a band.
Oh, if you're doing weird hours like that, it'd be impossible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of hung out with her until I met my ex-girlfriend in 1981 and moved in with her in Fortuna, and brought my record collection and everything like that. Then I got it. That's when I started getting into things like Humboldt County country and stuff like that. Because up there, if you wanted to work, you had to play country rock or country and western.
Mm-hmm.
I had a band that I named called Country Wave.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked a lot because we had a manager, a guy that would get us gigs. And his name was Scott Riley. Anyways, he got us into a United Way album that all the local bands were going to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets 2 songs or 1 song. It's their choice. And our singer, Ray, had written two songs. One was called Breaking It Down, which had to do with tearing down the instruments after the gig.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was called Humboldt County Line. And so we did those 2 tunes, and my job was just to bring my Les Paul and play guitar solo. Well, I didn't want it to sound country.
Huh.
So, so when I played my solo,
Oh
I
boy.
I pretended that I was like David Gilmour, Steve Howe, and Eric Clapton all rolled into one, and had it pretty sustained,
Mm-hmm.
playing long notes, trying to sound um, stoner type
Instead of
stuff
country.
instead of country.
Oh my.
I mean, I had a lick in the beginning of one where I went Randy like that because they
Mm-hmm.
asked me to do that. But when it came time for my solos, I I I just kind of went like that, almost like
Mm-hmm.
a. And I just wanted to be different. I didn't want to be pigeonholed and say, "Oh yeah, he did a country solo." So people were saying, "Wow, did you hear that solo that he did on that? It was really different." That's what the producer, the engineer guy, that when I was recording, he goes, "Ah, I dug that solo, man. That was cool." And so that makes you feel good when you do something like that.
Right.
So that album became pretty rare because it's hard to find. Although there was one over here, and I was really surprised to see it. And the guy that was selling it, Reading Records and Music, his name was Andrew. He asked me to autograph it, and that makes you feel good too.
Right. Yeah, I've looked it up on Discogs and I don't, well, didn't we look it up one day? I think it's out. I don't know. I don't remember. But I
It's
think
hard
we
to
looked
find.
it up and yeah, there weren't any available.
Yeah, it was put
Sad.
out by the United Way, so it's on United Way Records. Well, you can imagine how hard that would be to find, and that was all done in 1981.
Hmm.
But yeah, I had a good time because that was the first time I was ever in a studio, and I was thinking, oh, the possibilities. If I just had the money and the time
Right.
and the right musicians, because I certainly didn't want to play country.
Hmm.
But you do that over there. I got to thinking that the solos are just blues solos in a different key,
Well,
and
everything's all related.
but country is totally like a different kind of feeling, and there's so many ways you can take it, and I took it a way that nobody else did. And then after that, I got into a couple of different bands. One was called Headstrong,
Hmm.
and the same people. We had a band also called the Green River Band. Exact same people. And it got to the point where if we were ever playing in a bar that was near a river, there's a
Hmm.
lot of rivers in that area. There's the Eel River, there's the Van Dusen River, the Mad River. And anytime we were near a river, we would call ourselves the Green River Band. So we'd sing a song like Green River by Creedence, Clearwater Revival, and they would say instead of Green River, we would say the name of the river where we were, like Eel River. Come on down to Eel River, and everybody kind of, hey, it's like always, you know, keep everything sort of signatured.
Hmm.
And then when we did a rock gig, we called ourselves Headstrong, which I never really liked the name, but I did come up with it. But I also came up with the Green River Band. So every band I was ever in, except for Meltdown, I invented the name, except the ones that were already going when I joined.
Hmm.
Like there was another band before that called Revolver that was named after the Beatles album Revolver, but hardly could get any gigs because they wouldn't. It was so funny. This band was called the Boggies before I joined, and they changed the name to Revolver, and their fan base just disappeared. I kept saying, if you come out as the Boggies, we'll come out and support you and dance and stuff. And they kept saying it over and over and over. But we just can't get into it. What's called Revolver. We won't show up. And
Hmm.
the drummer and I kept telling him, you need to go back to being called the Boggies so we can get some work. I'm trying to eat. This is my job. And they go, nope. We're sticking to our guns. We're going to stay Revolver. And the band died on the vine. Me and the drummer quit. Ended up being in a band called the Usual Suspects. But anyways, it was this one band after another trying to find work. And as time goes on, this thing called karaoke is being
Hmm.
talked about, and nobody's hiring bands. All of a sudden, they all want karaoke people, and then the thing turned into DJs, and it just got to be stupid, and bands couldn't get work, and that's really what happened. So that was the '80s were real weird, and I mean, in every way possible. But there were some kind of cool things musically that came out, but it became where I was listening to music more than playing it.
Hmm.
Then I start playing music on my own at the house just for fun, making recordings of stuff. In 1989, I got a 4-track recorder that used a cassette player, and I went absolutely crazy recording keyboards and guitar and making my own music all by myself. It was
Hmm.
set up like a real studio. You had all these faders that were either going north and south or east to west,
Hmm.
and no turnable knobs on it, basically, except for a couple of things. But it is an amazing little tape deck. I made so many recordings on cassettes that I've still got to this day. And then I started getting into the digital thing where you don't use a tape, and I gotta admit that feels kind of weird. Rewinding a no tape recording is real strange.
Well, I think the Fostex was fun. I think once it went digital, I think a lot of the fun went away. I mean, I'm sure it's still fun, but there's something about that little Fostex X30 that was just a blast to use.
Yeah, it really was. And today you can't even find a cassette tape that you can use in a studio because you got to have Chrome, and nobody's selling Chrome.
Well, they
Everything
don't
is.
make Chrome, and they quit
I
making
know,
Chrome.
I know. I was buying Maxell Chrome XL2S or XL2 and just having a ball with it. I made so many tapes. I've got so many cassettes, it just would fry your brain. And then moving like up into the years,
Hmm.
I got into a metal band called well, it started out as a group called Random Access, and then they asked me to join. And I said, we can't keep using the same name because that other band played totally different stuff than we're playing. We're gonna start playing Motorhead and a heavy stuff as a trio,
Hmm.
ZZ Top and things like that. And we couldn't come up with a name. And I go, what about Network? And they go, hey, yeah, I like that. I go, you ever see the movie with Faye Dunaway? It's
Hmm.
great. But anyways, I'm sorry about the coughing. I think it's the
Right.
sugar in that soda that's making my throat itch. But anyways, yeah, we went out as Network and got some gigs for a while. We played a bunch of places, and then that band sort of just fizzled out. And then after that, I went through like a drought, not being in a band for a while, and ended up playing in a group that I wanted to put together that was going to do prog, and I called it Airshift.
Hmm.
Some people know my nickname on these things that we do. The Contrarians and stuff comes up as Airshift. I changed it back to Rand, but Airshift was a title I got from being in this guy that it's really weird how this happened, but this guy turned me in the Bay Area turned me on to a dude that was in Arcata playing prog out of Humboldt State University.
Hmm.
And I was listening to the show and I go, oh my God, I got to call this guy because Ken down in the Bay Area told me to contact him because he said he's expecting you to contact him. So I called him up and I go, Ramus? And he goes, yeah, who's this? I go, this is Rand Kelly. And he goes, oh yeah, Ken told me you'd probably call. And I go, I can't believe you've been playing my record collection for the last 2 hours. And he goes, oh, cool, you're into prog, huh? And I go, yeah, I love it. So anyways, he invited me down and I'm like walking around in the studio and I see this listing of schedules for the DJs for the week, and it says uh, Airshift
Hmm.
on it. I thought, well, that sounds like a good name for a band. So I wrote a song about him and called it Airshift, and then ended up calling the band Airshift. Is what it was because the drummer says, "Well, we got to call ourselves something. We got a gig on September 18th, 1994, outside in Arcata on the street. They were having some kind of festival." And he says, I got an idea. Why don't we just call the band Airshift after the song Airshift? Because he said, I love that song. And I go, oh, well, thanks. Yeah, that's good. We could call ourselves Airshift. So we did this gig where we did 5 songs, 3 that I wrote, 2 that the
Mhm.
guitar player wrote. And it's all, it all got recorded on a VHS recorder.
Mhm.
And we ended up transferring it through a friend of mine, ended up transferring it into DVD. And he is in a band from Montreal, Quebec, prog band called Visible Wind. And that's another weird story because uh, in 19 no well a few years later, I'll get to that. Anyways, we did that gig and we ended up getting it on YouTube. It's preserved on YouTube, the whole gig. It's in 3 parts, and it's called Airshift live in Arcata, California. And I'm real proud of that. I had a good time. I played keyboards and guitar, more keyboards than guitar.
Mhm.
And we had a great time doing that gig because we figured that that town had never seen the kind of music we were doing. It was just different and real prog, you know. And I keep saying but anyways, through like 95 and 96, I ended up joining this band called The Usual Suspects. And we played like bar stuff. And I was in another band with one of the guys out of that. We were just a duet
Mhm.
with a drummer. So we were actually a 3-piece at that point, and we called ourselves Freelance. And we did a couple of gigs, and then that broke up. And then around 2001, like in March 2001, I get
Mhm.
this email from a friend of mine over in Connecticut that says, "Hey, Stefan from Visible Wind is going down to Baja Prague to play down there, and on the way back, he wants to come and visit you." And I went, really? She goes, yeah. And so he drives up to Fortuna from Baja, and Fortuna is like right near Eureka. It's this area that, if you don't know, it's the northwestern part of California, about 80 miles,
Mhm.
90 miles south of Oregon, right on the coast. And yeah, he comes up and he's got a little Chevy Chevette,
Mm.
and he's driving this thing all the way from Canada. I couldn't believe it. Just a piece of junk, you know. And he hung out at my house for a week, and we did a couple of recordings and got him on CD. And it was just magical. I mean, like this guy, you know, he's like famous, you know. But not that many people know about Visible Wind. They're a great prog band. They sound a lot like Camel and Yes and stuff like that. And some of their vocals are in French, but most of them are in English. And it's just weird, all the things that happened, you know. I mean, like, who would do that? Not that many people would do that. But he's very trustworthy, and you know, we just had a good time making music. He played flute and keyboards, and I was trying to play drums. I remember being real tired because I was working at night and trying to do these recordings during the day, and was trying to lay down a drum track on the keyboard that I had at Emu Proteus. And I said, I'll do the drums on the keyboard. And I'm trying to bang away on the drums, and all of a sudden he's like going, there's no drums. What's happening?
Mhm.
I'd fallen asleep on the keyboard. I'm sound asleep because I was trying to bang these
Oh boy.
drum things out with my fingers. And
Mhm.
the next thing I know, I'm just laying on the keyboard. It's like kaboom. So he's like, what the heck? And you know, that was, like I said, 2001. And then I got into a band called Northwind, and and it played a bunch of gigs. And it was always the same thing, you know. You play the
Mhm.
same places, play the same songs, and you don't
S-
get that much
Same
money.
people.
But different people, but it's a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
fun. Oh, the audiences were the same pretty
Yeah.
much. You know, we would play for bikers and stuff like that, or just, you know, people. But ended up moving over to Reading in 2004 because I met my new girlfriend, Cindy, who I'm still with today. And she asked me to move in with her. So I never could get into a band over here because all the jobs I ever got were like graveyard or swing shift.
Hmm.
So I haven't been in a band in 20 years, 22 years or something like that.
Hmm.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah, 20 years. Yeah. Because I was like, everything was sort of falling apart around 2002, 2003. You could just see it was just, like George Harrison said, all things must pass.
Well, nothing stays the same.
Yeah, nothing stays the same. The only thing
Mhm.
permanent in life is change.
Right. Cool.
And, been here. I worked at the TA truck stop for 11 years and retired because I had to retire in 2017 because I got prostate cancer. And they said, well, you've got two choices. You can either have your prostate removed or you can die. What do you want to do? I go, well, I don't want to die. I'm pretty scared of death. So I opted for the surgery and I kicked cancer's butt. And then I've just been doing what I do. I just bought a whole lot of keyboards. 1988, I got called up that day, and the guy goes, "Can you come down to the club and we need a keyboard player?"
Hmm.
And I went, "I don't even know your music." "Oh, that's okay. You'll figure it out. You're good." And so I brought this keyboard with me, and I thought, well, I can't play spacey sounds with this band. This is like a rock and roll
Hmm.
blue boogie band, and they were called Taste. And obviously, he didn't know that Rory Gallagher had a band called Taste. But anyways, I set it up. I had a setting that I could just go to. The sweet spot was a Hammond B3 organ, rock and roll sounding organ like John Lord,
Hmm.
and I could do that, and I could just stay in that one place and I'd be okay. And I played that, and I did the whole entire gig with them, not knowing their tunes. And the leader of that band, John Sundell, was blown away. He goes, you know, I've never seen anybody do that before. I was hesitant to even let Jim call you, but he goes, we needed you real bad, and he says, I am blown away. And he goes, your last name's Kelly, right? He goes, I knew some Kellys when I was in school. And he goes, are you related to Sean? And I go, yeah, he's my cousin. It was his best friend
Hmm.
when he was a teenager. Anyways, I always liked his name, John Sundell. I thought it sounded cool, like a Beach
Hmm.
Boys or something. But anyways, I just I'm in that area right now where I'm 70 years old, and life is doing good. Life is great.
As it should be. And like I said, I want to thank Rand for coming on tonight and having a discussion. And we will be talking again soon.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for
All
having me,
right.
Grant.
You're welcome.
We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.